Hi guys, Emmy here again today, and I would like to do another one of those videos about DID questions, so questions for DID, people with DID, and I've got 5 of them, and I figured it's quite a good way again for me to help explain some things because to me everything is normal in my head, so it helps me to have questions. And if you guys have any questions of your own, just pop them in the comments and we will definitely get round to them. Also, if you have any specific questions for any of my alters, we will get round to that too. I'm also going to do a quick life update. I recently got married to Luke, my fiance. This is our ring. I don't know if you can really see. There you go. It's nice and rainbow. Also, my fingernails are black. Also, our fingernails are black at the moment because 4 of the 9 conscious alters really like having our nails black. So, things that happen behind the scenes when you have DID. You know, I don't hate having black nails, so it's not like a massive change, like you know, say they wanted to dye my hair black or something. So, anyway, without any further ado, let's get into the questions. The first one I'm finding it a bit tricky because I don't want to sensationalize DID and I don't want it to become a spectacle. The first question I'm going to answer is, are switches obvious, dramatic or visual? So here's the thing. There's already a lot of videos online where people with DID switch, and there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe I will allow switches to happen, but I don't want that to be the title of the video or the reason people come and watch. Because then it's sort of, to me, you know, no judge to any of those people, but to me personally, I don't want to be just a spectacle. I don't want us to just be about, oh look at this weird thing where they switch. I'm happy for people to meet my alters, and then it's about my alters, it's about their personality, it's about them as a person, whereas if it's more focused on the switching, it's more sort of like, oh hey, that's weird. And I kind of want to normalise it and make it feel more just like, hey, people with DID exist, they're more common than you think, and if it was more accepted by wider society, maybe things would be a bit more easy for us. So if I do switch on camera, it's just to sort of show what our switches are like. Again, our switches vary. We have some really quick ones and some really long ones, as I've discussed in the past. And our switches will look very different from other people's switches. The only reason I say that is because I'm having a very switchy day. So I can feel that one of my alters, I think Charlie, is with me. So she's very close, and sometimes it's difficult to stop a switch from happening. Like I said in the past, it's not controlled. I'm trying to sort of stick as Emily because I wanted to get this video done and I put my makeup on, and Charlie does not particularly like our makeup. But if it happens, it happens, and I just want to let you guys know with switches. So let's answer the question. Switches are not necessarily dramatic and visual. There will be no, oh look, our hair's changed colour. Obviously, you guys know that. But it's not always obvious, especially for systems where their alters switch a lot. These alters have to know how to act and present as the host in order to get by. So you might not tell any difference at all. There might be a difference, but it's not something, it's something that's noticeable to somebody that knows the person with DID. So if I switch in front of Luke or Nick or maybe some close friends, they will notice because they know me in and out and they know my mannerisms, and they also know some of my alters' mannerisms, so they will be able to read that and say, hey, have you got so-and-so around? So it's more obvious the more you recognise the person's mannerisms. Sometimes it can feel dramatic because, for example, with the ones that take longer, we find it easier to it's sort of like you close off, you shut down, and you just have to like wait and breathe, and you kind of look like you're asleep almost. So in a way that's very visual, but sometimes switches can happen like that, and you know, you won't know unless we make it obvious. So yeah, it also depends. It completely varies between systems. So yes and no, it's visual, and it's not something you would immediately notice unless you knew somebody had DID. You might just think somebody was being a bit like sleepy or drained or something. So unless you know, and because they've told you, you're not going to be able to necessarily spot it, because some people act different ways depending on situation anyway. So unless a system tells you, or it's very, very obvious, or they let you know, then you won't know, if that makes sense. Anyway, sorry to be a bit rambly on that one. So I just thought I'd let you know in case I switch with Charlie at some point in this video. You might see it, but we're very, very shy about switching because it's quite a sort of personal thing. But maybe I'll try and encourage one to happen, so that you guys can see a type of switch from our system. Because again, you can find switches on YouTube all over the place, so there is that. Anyway, question number 2. Can alters disappear? I guess the short answer to that is no, because alters are a part of your personality, a part of who you are. They're a whole individual, because your personality has divided itself, and then each of those parts has developed its own fully fledged personality. Unless I physically die, they're not going to just disappear. What can happen is merges, which is where two alters, it can happen between two alters or an alter and the host, sort of integrate is another word for it. They become one. So neither party is going away. They are coming together to create a more cohesive whole. And it's very interesting because it doesn't feel like they've gone. You're not missing them, you know, because it sort of feels like, oh, well, then they're not around. I can't talk to that person anymore. But you can, because they will become one. They'll become one person, but under one identity. It's kind of difficult to get your head round. I think it's one of the most interesting things, I suppose. But yes, that's one way that alters can disappear. They can merge so that individual identity doesn't exist anymore. However, everything else has become part of this one individual that's merged with another. They can disappear by being dormant for a while. Sorry. Another disclaimer, apologise. If I'm fidgeting a lot, or it looks like I'm bouncing up and down slightly, I always fidget my leg. So if you ever see that in any of my videos, please bear with me. I always forget to stop. But yes, my leg fidgets. Anyway, so yes, they can stay dormant for years. So for example, with us, Peter, he wasn't around for I think like 2 years, and we thought maybe he had gone somewhere because I didn't know it was DID then, but then he's come back. So just as some alters sleep a lot, there are some alters that aren't social and they don't front very often. They can just sit in the back for a very long time and not front. But that doesn't mean they have disappeared or gone. So yeah, that's the answer to if alters can just disappear. I hope that makes sense. So question number 3. Is it bad to dissociate? It depends on how bad you're dissociating. It's not bad. It's never bad. People should never feel ashamed of dissociating. Literally everybody dissociates. So everybody dissociates. You probably dissociate. For example, the common one used as an example is if you're driving and you sort of not exactly fall asleep, but you're driving and then suddenly you're at your destination. Maybe it's a very familiar route you do for work every day or something like that, where you're driving and then you're just like, oh well, we're here. It's sort of that gap of time where you're dissociated. Also drifting off or sort of staring into space, all of those sort of things where you're just like, that's dissociating, because basically you're just not fully conscious. You're just sort of taking that slight step backwards. So everybody, dissociates. Is it bad? No. However, if it's more serious, so for people with DID, it can become distressing. Obviously, where you dissociate to the point where you have alters, it depends entirely on the individual. So for most people with DID, they have amnesia, and obviously that's not exactly a positive. So that in a way is a bad thing about dissociating, that it can end up coming with loads of different things. Obviously, if you dissociate a lot because you have DID, it means that there could be some trauma involved, which means that then you have to deal with PTSD, trauma, amnesia, all that side of thing, which is what usually comes with DID. I guess I need to address that in a future video, which is, please don't take our version of DID as the norm, because we're actually not the norm. So DID has a lot of bad things about it. The main bad one for me when I dissociate is when we get soupy, as we call it, where we don't know who's out, who's in charge. We don't know who we are, and that can be very distressing. I filmed a short video of ourselves when we didn't know who we were and we were struggling because we were about to go and speak to a friend online, but we couldn't tell who we were and we were getting quite stressed about it. So maybe I'll put that in here to sort of show you guys that it can be really quite upsetting. Again, to show you more of the reality of DID. It's not all bad, but it's also not all good. Hey, so I thought I'd quickly jump on. I haven't put my background up, but we're having one of those moments where we don't know who we are. And we were supposed to be talking to friends any second, and we've just kind of been dissociating for a while, and we've just realised that we need to be somebody, we need to pick a person, but it's really hard because I feel really, really anxious and uptight, and I keep doing things that I don't know who the action belongs to. Like I feel scared and sick in my tummy, like sort of how one of my littles would if they were coming out, and I don't know what to do, and I keep also having to fight the feeling that like it's not a new one, because that doesn't happen with most people with DID. Like you don't just get new alters, and I don't know who I am. And I've got to try and calm down. Also, my dog's just come in. There his tail goes. Just got to calm down and not feel as sick, because we feel really sick right now. Because we're so jumbledy, it's almost like we're everybody all at once, but also nobody all at once, and I feel very sick. I thought I'd quickly record this, even though I probably will never share this, it's embarrassing. But maybe, just in case, to show people, again, some of the sides of DID. And maybe also I thought that maybe this would help me be more somebody. And I think it's important to keep that balance. So is it bad to dissociate? No, but it can be if your symptoms are very severe. Just, again, like I said, we're quite switchy, and it's neither of our control, but Charlie almost came out, but she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be in a video, so we had to have a moment to just sort of like let her step back again. So I think I'll have to do a switch in future with somebody that's comfortable with switching on camera. But again, I'm not going to name the video that because we don't want to make it about that. So if I seem a bit like drifty, it's just because of the internal struggle of trying to stop Charlie from coming out. Hi, Lucy here. I noticed that they were very switchy and were struggling. It was becoming quite difficult for Emily to stay fronting, and I also realised that we're making a video kind of about that. So I figured that I would come out. Oh, it's awkward. Yeah, I figured that we're trying to show people what it's like, and if we completely hid that side of ourselves, then that's also not showing the whole truth. So I will continue with the video, if that's okay. It's Lucy, just a reminder. And I guess this kind of shows you and answers the first question, is it obvious? If I didn't say something you probably wouldn't have noticed. Anyway, so the next question we have here is, how do alters get their names? Which is quite interesting, because even we don't really know. I'm trying to remember if any of us specifically chose our names. It just sort of came with us. So as we formed and as we became more and more conscious, we either came with our name or just developed it, I suppose. It wasn't a conscious choice. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm Lucy. It's difficult to explain because it feels very natural. I guess just as you wake up in the morning knowing what your name is, that's kind of how it is for us. There must be some internal process or You know, maybe they're names that the brain likes, I don't know. But I mean, the only person in our system that's been named is Blossom, and that is because she's not a full alter. She's a fragment. Yeah, I think Pepper liked her name, so maybe she chose it, but I don't believe she did. No, I don't have a good answer for this question. It just sort of happened. You just sort of have your name. Yeah, I can't think of it. I mean, that's the way we've experienced it anyway. Yeah, I don't think. I'm trying to sort of ask if anybody else is awake in our system. I'm trying to ask them. Autumn's name varied, so she was Summer and Autumn. But then she lost the Summer part because she felt that she didn't identify with it as much. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer for that one, so maybe somebody who does have a good answer can come back and answer that. The last question here is, what did it feel like when you first experienced a change? Obviously I can't answer that from Emily's point of view, but her first experience was with Jane, who I merged with, so I can kind of talk a little bit about that, at least the experience from our end. It was a long time ago, and we were about 16, and we were with Emily's ex-boyfriend, and we were very frustrated because nobody was acknowledging us, and even we were mostly upset because Emily wasn't acknowledging us. Emily wasn't taking us seriously because she didn't really know about us fully yet, and we wanted to be heard, so we were much more angry, frustrated, and that came out as a forced switch when Emily was sat next to her boyfriend, and we just sort of leaned over to him and told him we hate him. And obviously, because he didn't know that we were multiple, he was just confused. I think our intention was to be disruptive and maybe hurtful at the time, but it didn't, upset him. He was just a bit confused. And that took a lot of energy for us back then because, again, it was the first experience. So Emily was then back into being in control again, and she tried to explain to him what had happened. So that was her first experience with us sort of being more in control. Her first experiences were believing we were spirits, as I think she's talked about in the past. So she would interact with us a bit after that. Obviously, she's a very good person, and she realised that quite quickly because I was so angry and frustrated back then. She realised that must be for a reason, so she tried to make us feel better. I'm really self-conscious because of the switch, and because I know that the way I speak and the way I obviously have the same face as Emily, I just worry that people will look at me and think that I'm just Emily. I really hope that everybody can be kind and thoughtful if you ever do comment, because we're putting ourselves out there. And it's hard for me because I'm trying to protect Emily, but at the same time this is her passion, and we do want to end stigma against DID, and we want it to be more known about, so that, you know, systems don't have to struggle alone. Systems can see the way we present, and maybe that will help them. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it, and if you want to like and comment, that would be really great too. I would love to get more comments so that we can, you know, see what you guys think about things. That would be really helpful. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.